Is debt beating you down? You need discipline. You need the Debt Ninja. If you've been caught in a financial trap and need to be set free, then you need the Debt Ninja. Want to stop those harassing collection calls, start saving thousands in interest and fees, and get out of debt fast? Then you need to call the Debt Ninja. The Debt Ninja will find the best companies across the country that will help you consolidate all your bills into one easy payment, reduce your payments by 30 to 50%, and get you out of debt fast. If you have unsecured debt of $10,000 or more, such as credit cards, loans, or medical bills, call the Debt Ninja for a free 15-minute consultation.
Call 800-826-1246. 800-826-1246. That's 800-826-1246. Call today.
The Debt Ninja.
Individuals and businesses with tax problems, listen carefully. Do you feel like you're losing control over your finances? If you owe over $10,000 in back taxes or have unfiled tax returns, we can help you take back control. The IRS is the largest and most aggressive collection agency in the world, and they can seize your bank account, garnish your paycheck, close your business, and file criminal charges. Take control of your tax problems now by calling the experts at Tax Mediation Services and take advantage of the Fresh Start program and new laws that may allow us to negotiate a settlement for the lowest amount possible. Our team of tax attorneys and enrolled agents can stop collections and get you protected so you can take control of your financial future. Tax Mediation Services is accredited by the Better Business Bureau. Call now for a free case review and a price protection guaranteed quote.
Call Tax Mediation Services now at 800-610-9050. That's 800-610-9050. 800-610-9050.
All writers are prone to becoming so attached to our characters and stories that we struggle to see why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing to full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, shaping stories into masterpieces that can stand the test of time. Editing services are provided for all genres and all age categories. Services range from critiques of the short story through to the line edits of the full-length novel and copy editing for those preparing for publication. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's bio for your websites, as well as help with those book blurbs and promotional material. We won't abandon you to the masses. We want to celebrate with you and your successes. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services and prices, visit us at blackwolfeditorial.com.
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it. There to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable everyday carry or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.
You're listening to the Spark Radio Network, internet radio like you've never heard before. Innovation, creativity, and imagination are all said to begin with a spark. So fasten your seatbelt and take the ride of your life and listen for the spark.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
My name is Jessie. I'm a United States Special Forces widow. This gives me a unique perspective on the world around us. If you're willing to listen, I'll tell you how I see it, and I won't pull any punches. This is my POV, which stands for Point of View.
All right, it's Jessie. I am so happy to be back with you guys. Now, I know my voice is a little cracky still. Boy, what a week it's been. There was no way I could join you on air last night. You wouldn't have been able to hear me. Even if you turned your volume all the way up. It was that bad. It really was. So I apologize for not being able to be with you. And Monday night, it was an Army wife kind of night. I had to take care of several Army wife things. And like I've always told you, my troops, my family, sorry. As much as I love you guys, these are the people that I'm surrounded with 24/7. So I always put them first. I love you guys. I really do. But I have to put my, sorry, I'm doing my best. Mr. Frog is definitely here tonight, making himself heard. But I have to put those people first. They're the people who surround me 24/7, 365. All right. Enough about my week. Got my show prep. Yep. I didn't forget. How could I? There is a bunch of stuff that's been going on. Some of it good, some of it bad. Some of it I'm going to have to dig a little more into before I bring it to you guys. What can I say? Some of it definitely needs a second look. You know, I try and only bring you things I have confirmed to some extent. I can't confirm it all. I wish I could. Alright. Let's kick off, just like we have since the Mosul offensive started, with the Mosul situation. Alright. What's been going on in Mosul? Iraqi forces are starting to enter the city. And so what's everybody else doing? They're doing what they call back clearing. And I do have an audio clip for you. I believe this is the right one. It's one of the two. They're both good.
Progress in the last 24 hours includes the successful clearing of the village of Ali Rash on the southeast outskirts of Mosul by Iraqi security forces and Kurdish forces clearing Karabat and Khani Shirin north of the city. We have seen reports from Iraqi forces that they are in some places less than a kilometer from Mosul itself. While distance is not the best measure of the fight ahead and the coalition is prepared for difficult fighting ahead, there is no question that counter-ISIL forces continue to have the momentum in this fight.
Alright, so that was on Monday. Iraq is actually now inside parts of Mosul. What does that mean? That means the fighting is now street by street, block by block, house by house. Yes. It's going to be ugly. It's going to be bloody. In fact, I've just found an updated article from, let me take a look at it real quick. Counterterrorism special forces begin to penetrate the industrial districts of Kajuli and Karma, home to mechanics, workshops, and working-class homes. Iraqi's 9th Division forces closed on the outer edge of Mosul about 3.5 kilometers or 2 miles further to the south, entering Judayat al-Mufti, one of the newer residential areas built for Saddam Hussein-era soldiers and civil servants. As expected, the Mosul offensive initially saw simultaneous advances on a number of axes, with the Iraqi special forces leading the fight on 3 of them. One federal police column drove up the Baghdad-Mosul motorway west of the River Tigris, covering almost 25 miles in the first 2 weeks. Another column made up of Iraqi Army's 15th Division fought up along the western bank of the Tigris, encountering stiff resistance, including the deliberate burning by ISIS of sulfur deposits at al-Mashraq, creating a huge toxic cloud over the battlefield. The 15th Division remains stuck clearing out pockets of enemy around 30 kilometers or 19 miles south of Mosul's International Airport. And that's on the city's southern perimeter. The 9th Division tried a similar maneuver up the east bank of the Tigris, but strong Daesh resistance limited the advance to just 11 kilometers, 7 miles, with 25 kilometers, 16 miles still to go, to Mosul's southeastern edge. Kurdish Peshmerga forces led the 4th opening thrust east of the Tigris, breaching the first 4 to 10 kilometers or 2.5 to 6 miles of Daesh defenses on a broad arc northeast of Mosul. After 6 days of fighting, the Kurds dug in on a fortified front line as coalition and Iraqi units passed through to continue the offensive north and east of Mosul. To the northeast of Mosul, Iraqi's Army's 16th Division and Turkish-supported loyal forces to former Nineveh Governor Athil al-Nujafi have gained around 6 kilometers, which is about 4 miles, with 9 kilometers or 6 miles still to go, to Mosul's northern outskirts. The most successful access east of the Tigris was CTS attack along the main road from Erbil to Mosul. Special forces recaptured 9 miles of the road and penetrated the eastern edge of the city. Like I said, progress is being made. I would still have some guarded optimism. However, there is progress. Is this going to be over tomorrow? No. Next week? I doubt it. Next month? Don't hold your breath. My guesstimate, and this is strictly your host's semi-educated guess, I'm going to say January, February, maybe as late as March. So we'll say February, March, okay? And I'll put that on record. That's a guess. Sometime in February or March. All right. Daesh leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi calls on suicide bombers to destroy the cities of unbelievers in the west and orders no surrender as Iraqi forces close in on his Mosul hideout. Yes, the leader is being believed to be trapped inside the city. And I don't want to believe this, but in my heart, I know it's true. There will be some attacks. I don't want to see attacks on U.S. soil. Oh, dear God, that's the last thing I want. Come on. You guys ought to know me better than that. However, do I think it's going to happen? Yeah, I do. Are they going to be huge? I hope not. I hope they're half-witted, half-baked, and stopped. Sorry, just stapling together some show prep. I got a couple of really long articles I just need to wrangle real quick. But Baghdadi is saying, and this is his first audio release since the offensive began. He was confident of victory and called on his fighters to resist as Iraqi forces were poised to enter the city, declared a caliphate when it was overrun by Daesh 2 years ago. Do not retreat, he said into the audio recording. Holding your ground with honor is 1,000 times easier than retreating in shame. This total war and great jihad that Daesh is fighting today only increases our firm belief and our conviction that this is a prelude to victory. Alright, I have said before, I will say it again. This is an apocalyptic death cult. And if you haven't listened to any of my shows with recurring Justin Kinney, please do so. I encourage you. It will be absolutely eye-opening. Senior Kurdish official Hoshir Zebra said there were solid intelligence reports saying Baghdadi was in the city. It was in Mosul's Great Mosque of al-Nouri that the terrorists declared the Daesh Caliphate in 2014. Head of Russia's General Staff Valery Gerasimov said today that any Daesh militant trying to escape Mosul for Syria should be killed on the spot. And British jets and drones pound Daesh targets as part of a push to drive the jihadist group out of their Iraqi stronghold. Yes, the Brits are in this too. British Defense Secretary Sir Michael Fallon has described the effort to liberate Mosul as a big moment in the war against Daesh and vowed that British forces would continue to play a major role as part of the coalition supporting the Iraqi and Kurdish forces on the ground. The Minister of Defense released details of a series of strikes carried out by the Royal Air Force on Monday and Tuesday. On Monday, a Reaper drone was in action southeast of the city attacking targets, including a mortar position and an armed truck and 2 ISIS heavy weapons teams, one equipped with an anti-tank gun. So, like I said, and firefighters are working to extinguish the fire at oil wells that were set on fire by Daesh as they fled after Al-Qaeda's town cleansing from Daesh militants as part of the operation to retake Mosul. Alright, I have a second audio clip, and I'm going to let you take a listen to that real quick. I grab a drink of water and see if we can get rid of Mr. Frog a little bit more. Alright, you guys take a listen.
Colonel John Dorian, Operation Inherent Resolve spokesman, stated in Friday's briefing that they are working diligently to back-clear areas while the coalition continues to make precision strikes to take out Daesh targets in Mosul.
The coalition has delivered almost 2,500 close air support bombs and missiles, artillery rounds and HIMARS rockets on enemy targets since the battle started on October 17th. Those weapons destroyed not only the tunnels we already discussed, but 33 vehicle-borne improvised explosive devices and hundreds of enemy vehicles, fighting positions, and artillery pieces.
Alright, sorry about that. I was still drinking water when that audio clip ended. Didn't have a real long one, what can I say? Alright. So, the short version of this, they are working very hard to retake Mosul. However, this is not going to be a one-and-done situation. This is going to be one of those situations where it's going to be bloody, it's going to be long, and it's going to be brutal. Now, you know I've got a couple of friends over in the area that are part of the U.S. coalition, and I'm not going to tell you if they're U.S. or coalition troops. That, no offense, you don't need to know. But I've got some really awesome news. The humanitarian relief effort, at least in some parts, is definitely working. These people this particular friend is a pilot, and he flies in relief supplies and helps airdrop them. And he is now seeing some of those people he's been dropping supplies to make it out of where they've been, for all intents and purposes, held captive. And it made him smile. It really did. Alright. I've got a bit of a disturbing story. And I do have an audio clip for this one. But we're going to discuss the story first. U.S. journalist Austin Tice. Now, for those of you who are going, who? And why should I care? Alright, first of all, I consider myself a journalist, although I'm also an opinion person, so I do try and differentiate. But Austin Tice has been missing for 4 years after he was presumably kidnapped in Syria. And the Newseum, and I said Newseum, Newseum, put up a banner. Now, the Newseum is obviously a museum dedicated to journalism. And they put up a banner and said the banner would remain on display outside until Tice returned home. Tice was a Marine and Georgetown law student from Houston. He disappeared in August 2012 while covering Syria's civil war. A video released a month later showed the journalist blindfolded and held by armed men. He has not been seen or heard from since. His mother, Deborah Tice, told reporters, "I long to hold my son in my arms. I want to be whole again." But she did not believe the members of the Syrian opposition were holding her son. Relatives have also cast doubt that he was a captive of the Syrian government or the Islamic State. The Newseum is 8 blocks from the White House. And his family believes that in the waning days of the Obama administration, they want their son to be a priority. And having a banner on Pennsylvania Avenue is a great way to try and drive that point home. And at the State Department press briefing today, it was brought up. And as I consider myself part of the journalist community, I want to play that clip.
Just take advantage of the day here to talk a little bit about Austin Tice. I think you probably saw the museum put up a banner today outside the museum to serve as a public reminder of his situation and, frankly, the very real risk that journalists face all around the world. As a matter of fact, that's a topic that the Secretary raised with the Edward R. Murrow Fellows that were here today, international journalists that were here, and he talked about that. But it's noteworthy, and I think, given what the Secretary said this morning, and given that the banner's up at the museum, I felt it incumbent upon me to also note that we continue to remain deeply concerned about Austin's well-being, and that's across our government. And across our government, I can assure you that people are working very hard every day to try to bring him home to his family. So even though we don't have a lot of information right now, we're going to continue to work with our check protecting power in Syria to continue to gain and to glean as much information as we can. And we're obviously going to continue publicly and privately to urge all sides to ensure the safety of journalists that are operating in Syria, and obviously to call on Austin's captors to release him now and return him safely to his loved ones, which is where he belongs. So with that, start.
Just briefly on that, and then I'm sure we'll return to Syria again. But on Austin Tice, does that your statement suggest that there isn't any? That there's no new information here. It's still we're still in the same kind of holding pattern.
Like I said, considering myself part of the journalist community, that is a story I wanted to bring up, and I wanted to bring it up in the first half of my show. Now we are going to go back to Mosul just briefly, because something just popped up. Iraqi forces, special forces, pushed their advance in the eastern district of Mosul to clear a neighborhood of any remaining Daesh militants, killing 8 while carrying out house-to-house clearances. 6 of the militants were killed in a tunnel in the newly recaptured Gojali neighborhood. And one of the militants that was killed was wearing an explosive-laden vest, in other words, suicide vest. Hundreds of civilians cleared out of adjacent neighborhoods of Al-Sama, some carrying white flags. All the women were wearing a niqab, a veil that covers the face, and all the men had long beards. Because Daesh strictly enforced an Islamic dress code in territory it holds. Through the day, the special forces could be seen going house to house in Mosul's easternmost district, while sappers searched the road for explosives and booby traps left behind by the jihadis driven out a day earlier. A curfew has been imposed on the neighborhood while gains there were being consolidated. In other words, they're trying to make sure they got it all. We fear that Daesh militants could attack our forces or the town with mortars, so for the safety of the families, we ask them to stay inside their homes. No advances were planned while high humidity and clouds obscured the view of aircraft and drones, a key component to the operation provided by a U.S.-led air campaign. The guns were largely silent during the day in Gojali, which is inside Mosul city limits but just outside more urban districts, although sporadic rifle cracks could be heard, as well as some army artillery fire on Daesh positions. Special forces have detained at least 3 suspected militants in the area. So, now, just as a reminder, and this is, the UN is condemning this, and I told you guys this days ago. The UN is now saying, oh my gosh, breaking news, Daesh may be using human shields. Knock, knock. Knock, knock. I said it a week ago, 2 weeks ago, something like that. UN Human Rights Office is calling it a depraved and cowardly strategy by Daesh. The UN Human Rights Office is calling it a depraved and cowardly strategy. The use of human shields goes against all military convention. Once inside the small, sparsely populated villages that ring Mosul, Iraqi forces must contend with explosive booby traps and hidden snipers, blah, blah, blah. The civilians from southern villages appear to have been forced into the city by Daesh, and witnesses said they looked to be in poor condition, with no food or accommodation. Iraqi security forces and federal police report to have surrounded 90% of the Haman al-Ali, the largest town south of Mosul. Kiram al-Nouri of the militants umbrella group known as Popular Mobilization Units, Jafar al-Husseini, spokesman for the unit member Hezbollah brigades, said the total of some 15,000 Shiite fighters were now participating in the battle. Daesh is telling people that the army is coming and they will kill you. So you have to come with us if you want to be safe. In one case, the U.S.-led coalition destroyed about 40 Daesh vehicles gathered outside of Mosul that officials believed were set to carry militants and civilians to be used as shields into the city. As jihadists retreat, they have been taking the residents with them to be used as human shields, and for those who refused, the punishment was quick. Big challenge for any military strategy is always the civilians. The grave danger is that Daesh fighters will not only use such vulnerable people as human shields, but may opt to kill them rather than see them liberated. And this is a grave concern of the Iraqi security forces and the U.S.-led coalition. The UN and Human Rights Group fears that more than 200,000 civilians could be displaced in the opening weeks of the offensive. General Matthew C. Eisler said Friday that Iraqi troops are consolidating gains made east and south of the city, but insisted momentum was still on their side. Displacement is hard, especially for rural farming communities whose wealth lies in fields and livestock they cannot take to camps. The battle for Mosul itself, a city many times larger than any other ever held by Islamic State, is expected to be the biggest military operation in Iraq since U.S. troops invaded to topple former President Saddam Hussein almost 14 years ago. My, oh my, where has the time gone? We're past the bottom of the hour. It is time to take that commercial break and pay them bills.
The following message contains a special offer for listeners of this station. Are you a man over 40? Are you constantly looking for the nearest bathroom? Do you wake up multiple times a night to use the bathroom? Right now, Perfect Prostate is sending out free bottles of their groundbreaking new formula to listeners of this station. Perfect Prostate Formula was developed by medical doctor Mitchell Fleischer, and its ingredients have been clinically studied to reduce your frequent nighttime bathroom visits and promote healthy urine flow. Right now, preferred customers get their first bottle of Perfect Prostate absolutely free. There's nothing to lose. Perfect Prostate is guaranteed to reduce that constant urge to use the bathroom, especially at night, and promote healthy urine flow. Don't wait. Call now for your free bottle. Just pay shipping and processing. Dial 1-800-675-0251. That's 1-800-675-0251. Supplies are limited. One free bottle per household. Call now. Dial 1-800-675-0251. That's 1-800-675-0251.
Individuals and businesses with tax problems, listen carefully. Do you feel like you're losing control over your finances? If you owe over $10,000 in back taxes or have unfiled tax returns, we can help you take back control. The IRS is the largest and most aggressive collection agency in the world, and they can seize your bank account, garnish your paycheck, close your business, and file criminal charges. Take control of your tax problems now by calling the experts at Tax Mediation Services and take advantage of the Fresh Start program and new laws that may allow us to negotiate a settlement for the lowest amount possible. Our team of tax attorneys and enrolled agents can stop collections and get you protected so you can take control of your financial future. Tax Mediation Services is accredited by the Better Business Bureau. Call now for a free case review and a price protection guaranteed quote.
Call Tax Mediation Services now at 800-610-9050. That's 800-610-9050. 800-610-9050.
All writers are prone to becoming so attached to our characters and stories that we struggle to see why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing to full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, shaping stories into masterpieces that can stand the test of time. Editing services are provided for all genres and all age categories. Services range from critiques of the short story through to the line edits of the full-length novel and copy editing for those preparing for publication. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's bio for your websites, as well as help with those book blurbs and promotional material. We won't abandon you to the masses. We want to celebrate with you in your successes. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services and prices, visit us at blackwolfeditorial.com.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it. There to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable everyday carry or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
All right, thank you for hanging in there with me while I paid those bills. And if you're just joining me, I apologize. I didn't even get on the air last night because, well, Mr. Frog was 20 times worse. So there was no way it was happening. So what could I say? I apologize, but that's the way it was. Alright, moving on with the show. There is more going on than just Mosul. Media defenders in Afghanistan say at least 11 journalists have died and hundreds more have been forced to flee from fighting in the first 10 months of 2016, making it the deadliest year for the country. The Afghan Journalist Safety Committee, a local media watchdog, says more than 60 journalists have been killed in the country in the past 16 years, and authorities never investigate those deaths. And a seminar in Kabul, the local watchdogs have reported that hundreds of Afghan male and female reporters have been forced to flee the conflict zone in the past year. But the conflict-related situations are not the only real threat to journalists. Intimidation and harassment are common, particularly in cases which journalists try to tell corruption stories. Impunity emboldens perpetrators and feeds into a vicious cycle. Fear and self-censorship among the media are real issues that would end up denying the public the right to information and diminishing the confidence in the rule of law. The UN Assistance Mission in Afghanistan praised the Afghan government for issuing new legislation and declaring its commitment to fight impunity for crimes against journalists, but she echoed demands by local media monitors for addressing the culture of impunity through effective implementation of the laws. In other words, it's not just enough to have the law in the books, you got to enforce it. Yes, you do. All right. Remember the South China Sea? Well, it's back in the news. Never really was out of it, but all right. Coast Guard patrols in the Patang Shoal resume on Thursday. The Philippine Coast Guard will resume its patrol in the Patang or Scarborough Shoal on Thursday amid the steady presence there of their Chinese counterparts. As far as I know, now remember, the Chinese government vowed to ignore any arbitration decision from The Hague. And China seized control of the shoal, a U-shaped rock formation with a sprawling lagoon teeming with rich maritime resources in 2012, following a maritime standoff with Philippine authorities. And even though the arbitration court in The Hague said, no, China, you don't own this. Guess what? China said, we don't care. But Philippines is going to resume their patrols that they had backed off of earlier. For years, the United States and allies have struggled to contain China's ambitions in the South China Sea, even as China steadily seeded the waters with artificial islands and military installations. In other words, what they would do is they'd take a reef or a rock and build it up until it was an island, because there is a difference in the legal rights between a rock, an island, a reef, and all those kinds of things. So let me see if I can real quick, and I do mean real quick, find the audio clip for that. Because I do actually have one for that. I just don't know if I can lay paw on it. I'm going to give it one quick shot. Give me just another couple seconds. No, I don't seem to be able to lay hands on it that quickly. Alright, one more quick spot. Not there. But there is a difference in how these are viewed between the different countries. According to international law. A rock, an island, a reef, all of them have different, for lack of a term, legal protections, legal definitions, and the different ones mean that you can have different rights in different distances and things like that. It's kind of complicated, but I can't find the audio clip that explains it right now. But that's why China was building up all these artificial islands. And of course, Philippine President Duterte is angry with the United States over its criticism of his lethal anti-drug program, in which 2,000 people have been killed, mostly by the police. But getting back to the South China Sea issue, it's one of those things that Philippines deal with China pokes a hole in a U.S. strategy, because nobody wants the U.S. to leave the region to China. But China is using economic leverage. It has its geographic position and its lack of interest in human rights to try and change the balance of the influence in a region where vagaries of American politics are now on stark display. In other words, no one's quite sure exactly where the U.S. stands on some of these issues in this area. The deal is an informal one and has not been committed to writing, but it seems to give both parties they want. And it's one of those things that Malaysia's Prime Minister is angry over money laundering and shopping in Beijing this week, and shopping for military hardware. The deal between the China and the Philippines apparent over the last week, which reports that China began to allow its Philippine fishermen to operate in contested waters in the South China Sea for the first time in 4 years. And Mr. Duterte's cooling relationship towards the United States is showing signs of somebody maybe switching sides here, folks. Allowing the Philippine fishermen back into the waters around the shoal, China, whether it admits as much or not, was complying with part of the ruling that dealt with the blockade. China has suddenly decided to act in a manner that complies with one aspect of the award. It's a welcome step in the right direction. The tribunal did not consider the question of sovereign rights. They said China is not out of bounds claiming sovereignty over the shoal, nor would the Philippines be if it did the same. Beijing has played a clever diplomatic hand. It secured a public relations win by lifting the blockade without foregoing its sovereignty claims over the shoal or even removing its Coast Guard vessels. Mr. Duterte has vowed to scale back relations with the United States, including possibly denying American access to 5 military bases in the Philippines. Which, we need those bases. This guy is switching sides right in front of our eyes, folks. Alright. My voice is not going to hold out much longer. So I'm going to cover 2 more quick stories. I'm just going to... It is suspected that North Korea is preparing for another missile launch, and everyone is thinking it's going to be right around the U.S. election day. I'm not going to go into details. Come on, you guys know. There's satellite imagery shows stuff being prepared at the one of the usual launch test sites. Often Kim Jong-un appears, however, I haven't seen mention of them prepping the VIP visitor area. Doesn't always. Now, as my voice is rapidly failing, I have a good news story to end. Oh, actually, I've got one more kind of twisted story, and then I've got a good news story. A former high-ranking Iranian judicial official who came to symbolize Iran's violent suppression of rights activists and journalists has been sentenced to 135 lashes in a corruption case. The punishment of the former official Saeed Mortavi, who built his reputation as a feared judge and prosecutor in Tehran, beginning in the early 2000s, was reported on Wednesday by the official Iranian news media. It's unclear when or even whether the punishment will be carried out on Mr. Mortavi, who has been described by Human Rights Watch as the serial human rights abuser. Lashing or flogging, widely regarded as torture in much of the world, is still a common sentence in Iran for crimes like adultery, theft, and alcohol consumption. Mr. Mortavi was sentenced in connection with what state news media called his seizure and waste of public funds in 2012 and 2013 as the head of the Social Security Organization, a welfare agency that helps older adults and the unemployed. As a judge, Mr. Mortavi was known in Iran as the butcher of the press for his role in closing many reformist newspapers during the presidency of Mohammad Khatami, whose policies of relative tolerance were despised by hardcore conservative clerics. Mr. Mortavi was also accused by Canada of involvement in what is described as the torture and fatal beating in 2003 of an Iranian-Canadian photojournalist in Evin prison in Tehran. Photojournalist Zahara Kazemi was seized for taking photographs outside the prison. Mr. Mortavi was perhaps the best known in more recent years from what human rights advocates have described in the imprisonment of torture, deaths of protesters. He was Tehran's chief prosecutor at the time. And he has now himself been sentenced to a lashing. I don't know how I feel about this one. Heidi Gahami, director of the International Campaign for Human Rights in Iran, a New York-based advocacy group, called it a total whitewash for a person who is implicated in gross corruption and graft, as well as torture and deaths in custody of prisoners in 2009. Mr. Mortavi could probably buy his way out of the flogging sentence by paying a fee. In other words, bribery runs rampant over there. Sarah Lee Whiteson, the executive director of Human Rights Watch Middle East and North African Division, said even a serial human rights abuser like Saeed Mortavi does not deserve corporal punishment that amounts to torture. Alright, like I said, that was my twisted story. Don't have time to do that one, but I do have a fun one we're going to end on. It's about a veteran-owned business and a tie to the Secretary of Defense. Oh yeah. It's kind of a neat, happy story. So let's take a listen.
My name is Diego Echeverri. I'm a co-founder and CEO of a neckwear startup company called Bull and Moose, a U.S. Army veteran from 2002 to 2006 with the 10th Mountain Division. When I got to the Army, I used the GI Bill, went back to school, got a business degree, moved to D.C., and decided to start a necktie company. I think that if it hadn't have been for my military experience, kind of the stick-to-itiveness that you learn all the way from basic training to deployments, seeing stuff through, that was probably the most valuable lesson in terms of becoming an entrepreneur. When we got asked to do the tie for Secretary Ash Carter, it was the biggest joy and the highest honor since starting the company. The tie that I'm wearing now that we designed with the Secretary's office and we made here, handmade in the United States here in New York. But we also made a scarf and it's become a gift that the Secretary uses when he meets foreign heads of state and leaders. So it's a tremendous honor. Definitely the crowning achievement of our company was to make the tie for the Secretary, and I think that to be recognized as a veteran-owned startup that supports veterans nonprofits and veterans causes, and we're immensely proud of that recognition and the work that we're doing and the work we hope to continue to do.
All right, I thought that was a really cool piece of how someone took what he learned in the military to start his own company. And they have 36 designs, many of which are made with surplus military fabrics. Yeah, I thought that was really cool. And in the pictures that go with the story, they've got the old style camouflage BDU pattern. And he says it's his most popular item. So Bull and Moose, which is run out of Alexandria, Virginia, is getting so big he's going to have to start hiring workers soon. His advice for vets looking to start their own business: find mentors who have experience in what you're looking to do and take advantage of the GI Bill. Getting an education, going to school, and learning about business was the most important thing I did post-military. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been prepared to start a business. I like the last quote the best. If it weren't for the men and women currently fighting overseas and at home, we wouldn't have the freedoms to start companies and be successful. I certainly attribute a lot of my company's success to my military experience. And on that note, folks, I'm out of here. That's the best I can do tonight. My throat is raw. Now, little side note, I am going to do my best to be with you every night this week. I am going to do my level freaking best. I can promise nothing. But you have my word, if I've got a voice, even if it's as bad as tonight's, I'll be here. Take care, folks.